We have a lot to get to here on the Laura Ingraham Show, and delighted to be joined by my friend, Senator Rand Paul, in the great state of Kentucky. He joins us now. Senator, great to talk to you, my friend. How are you?
Very good, Laura. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I know you've said a few things about this particular case, but for someone like you who is really you're really loath to give the government more power, especially to compel individuals against their individual beliefs recognized and protected by the Constitution. Where do you come out on this particular case?
I think the real problem here is that people want to impose their viewpoint on someone else. And if you want to convince people that same-sex marriage is okay, I think persuasion is better than using coercion. And so this lady, who is the clerk, has a religious objection, and I think we ought to honor that religious objection. And there's another way around this. She's actually said she will file the contract. Why can't they just let somebody else notarize the contract? Why do they have to have her sign something that she has a religious objection to? So what it ends up being is sort of people who are intolerant of others' beliefs, and I think that's a real problem.
I have a theory in that this is just kind of a shot across the bow. That this is basically a case that it was getting a lot of publicity for obvious reasons. Cameras follow the couples when they go in there, and I think it's a warning to other people. You will do this or else, and that's my issue. I mean, I have a lot of friends who happen to be gay, and they got married, and they're old friends of mine, and I love them, and they're wonderful people. But this is just a question about constitutional rights, and that are guaranteed, that just weren't discovered in the Constitution by the Supreme Court, but that are guaranteed. And so what happens to military chaplains? What happens in other closely held corporations where individuals are asked to do things? I mean, will the government be used to basically bring everybody in line to conformity on this? That's what concerns me.
Yeah, so really the problem with federalizing this and trying to define this as some sort of new constitutional right is that will churches be forced to adhere to this? Will a church school with a dormitory be forced to have dormitories for same-sex couples, and when they find that religiously, to be in opposition to their religion? So, this is the whole problem with making this a national thing. It should have always been a local issue. Our founding fathers did not go to Washington, D.C. for a marriage license. They went to the local courthouse. And I think what's going to come of this, though, is the only way out, other than another Supreme Court case, which is not going to happen in the near future, is that I think states and localities are going to opt out of the marriage business. This is what's happening in Alabama, and I suspect that push comes to shove, that's what's going to happen here. Is what will happen, even if they say we're still going to do licenses, my guess is they'll change the law to say you don't have to sign the license, or that you can get a notary of the public. Then you go to a notary of the public and sign it. Why do you have to force this woman to sign something just to prove to her that she has to bend her religious beliefs to your beliefs? And so it is an intolerance on the part of those who want to force her to sign this.
And Senator Paul, you're down in single digits in the Real Clear Politics national average. I know you get good crowds, because I get emails from friends of mine who are in the audience out in Washington State, and you go into places that a lot of candidates won't go, or maybe even afraid to go. What do you have to do to kind of turn up the heat and turn up the numbers here? It's obvious, polls are polls, and it's a snapshot. I understand that, but you're obviously not where you wanted to be at this juncture. So what next for you?
The weird thing about it, Laura, is that if I weren't reading this online, I would have no evidence or facts to support it. Everywhere we go and everywhere we've gone, especially since the debates, our crowds have doubled and tripled. We're having crowds of 700 to 1,000 at 8:30 in the morning on a weekday when people are at work. So we had big crowds throughout the Northwest. We've had big crowds in South Carolina. And so it really is a little bit perplexing to me. Now, the one thing about the polls is that when you ask them right now, 2/3 of the people say they're undecided, and then the pollster pushes them to make a decision. Mm-hmm. So really, this is a poll of the undecided and maybe of non-voters. And so in the end, I think things will shift a bit over time. The one thing we do take solace in as far as the polling goes at this point, though, is that we lead Hillary Clinton in 5 states, won by President Obama. And that's what I've been trying to point out, that I'm a different kind of Republican, one that can appeal to young voters, but also one who's willing to take the vote and appeal to non-traditional Republican voters, African Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans, you name it. I'm willing to take the vote and try to get the vote for Republicans that we've been losing.
Are you speaking Spanish on the trail at all?
I'm afraid my Spanish is so bad that people are asking me not to speak any Spanish, but I can speak a little bit, and it helped me when I was down in Guatemala to sort of be able to communicate with patients. And
yeah, they're not voting, though. They're not voting, not yet, at least.
It's a little better than my French. When I was in Haiti, everybody speaks French down there, but it's French and a mixture of Creole.
Yeah.
So I learned about 5 or 6 phrases of French, and I would tell a patient to do it, and they never, ever responded to my phrases. So either my French pronunciation is really, really awful, which is possible, or my patients were hard of hearing, or both. So I'm not sure I didn't have much success with my French in Haiti.
There's a little dust up over the way to approach voters today, and whether we're really requiring assimilation of people in the United States, or whether there are many, especially on the left, but some on the right, I think, as well, have no problem with kind of a separatist understanding that's allowed to gel in certain immigrant communities. You see that to some extent on a religious basis happening in places like Minneapolis with the Somalis. They kind of the Somalis stay with the Somalis. And I get that, and Jeb was out there in Miami the other day, and he was speaking in Spanish, and the reaction has been something. The folks on the left, Senator Paul, are thrilled with this. People like the MSNBC crowd.
It gets to the embarrassing fact that the vast majority of Americans don't speak a second language. You go overseas, people speak Spanish and English. They speak French and English.
Right.
Some of us can barely
speak American.
Yeah.
What's your sense about this? I mean, is this really what we should be doing? Is speaking in Spanish to people to get our point across, or is that what we all need to aspire to? I do speak Spanish pretty well, but
I think we may have overplayed this, but I think your point on assimilation is an important one. And I have a good friend who came here, and his parents were from Central America, and then one other parent from South America. And he told me, growing up, my mother told me we speak Spanish at home, but we want to be successful in America, so we speak English when we're outside the home to make sure our English is good and to make sure we can do well in America. And I think assimilation is an amazing thing. A good example of how even in our country, assimilation didn't happen, and it's been a disaster for the people, has been the Native American population on the reservations. If they were assimilated within a decade, they'd probably be doing as well as the rest of us. But instead, seclusion and isolating them, we took their land, and then we put them all in small quadrants of land. Right. But they don't do very well.
But what do you think Jeb's getting at? What do you think he's getting at? I mean, what is he getting at here? He's getting a lot of praise from all the kind of cool people in mainstream liberal media for this. What's going on here?
Oh, I don't know. I think some of the criticism, I think, has been overblown, and some of the support has been overblown. I'm not that big a deal on whether or not you speak to an audience in Spanish, so I don't think it's that big a deal.
Well, isn't it? Well, hold on, Senator. Isn't that confirming the point that a lot of people who are here, who've come here, many of them have come illegally, some have come, I mean, I don't know how many people are legal or illegal he's talking to. I have no idea, but doesn't that kind of confirm the point? That it's different from previous generations? They're not assimilating. In fact, it's so bad that you have to campaign in Spanish?
Well, I think it's two different points. I think you can overstate, speaking to people in Spanish. I spoke to the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce here about a year ago, and I did a couple of opening lines in Spanish and kind of made fun of how bad my Spanish was.
That's different.
And then, but we also talked about how assimilation, when you bring some of the different cultural influences from your country and you make them part of the greater American way, that is good. And
That's
so I don't
fine.
want to say that, different traits that people from, Latin America, the Romance languages and all that bring to America. We are a big mixture and melting pot of a lot of things.
Melting pot. That's the key.
Yeah, but I do agree with your point that we melt into the pot, and you bring your cultural attributes, and you try to make America a better place, and we do often. Mm-hmm. But if you come and you stay separate, and you say that we're going to adhere to a law, particularly the thing with some of those who come here and are actually taking their girls back to parts of the Middle East and doing genital mutilation, which is almost even hard to talk about. But it's like that kind of stuff is not assimilation, and that's child abuse. And so the thing is we do want people who want to come to America to be part of it. But I don't want people who want to come to America and then be still part of another and not absorbed into the American culture.
What do you make of the return of the Cheneys, as Jeb is obviously amassing a huge amount of money? The Cheneys are out on their book tour and pretty good appearances. They're on CNN and Fox and arguing for a much more muscular foreign policy. At one point yesterday, entertaining the idea of 10,000 American troops on the ground to try to defeat ISIS if that's what it takes. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I think Dick Cheney's probably been wrong about almost every foreign policy decision of the last 20 to 30 years. He thought we'd be greeted as liberators in Iraq. The only time he was actually right about something in foreign policy is when he advised the first George Bush that taking Baghdad would lead to chaos, civil war, and destabilize the region. And that's ultimately what happened. We have a disaster in Iraq. We've got a disaster in Syria. We've got a disaster in Libya. But all from sort of the notions that Dick Cheney and his friends have put forward that America should be involved everywhere all the time. And really the one true thing in the Middle East that's happened again and again is that when we topple a secular strongman, what we get is chaos and the rise of radical Islam. So, no, I think what Dick Cheney promotes as far as boots on the ground everywhere all the time has been a disaster for this country, and it's everything that I oppose. And one thing that I want to be mentioning and making a big point in the debate is that I am different, and I am the one who's not sending our young men and women back into the Middle East for another 10 or 15-year war there. The boots on the ground need to be Arab boots on the ground, and instead of Dick Cheney wanting to send Americans there, what he ought to be advocating is what I'm advocating. The first 10,000 boots in every battle over there need to be from Saudi Arabia, because I'm tired of providing great wealth to them. They foment radical Islam around the world and even in our country, and yet they're unwilling to fight, and that they think we're their army, and I find that very objectionable.
What about the rules change that allows now Carly Fiorina to be on the stage for that debate? Any reaction to that? I guess there's going to be a +1 now. Looks like you will not be on that primetime stage. Most likely. It's not determined yet, but...
No, I think we will be part of the main debate, and I think that's a good thing, and I'm not sure if I have a strong opinion on who else is on the stage, but I don't get to make the rules for the media other than that. Mm-hmm. I think it'd be nice if we're looking at polling data to also look at which candidates do best against the Democrats, because you might have someone leading the Republican beauty contest who actually does miserably against the Democrats, and that might be or ought to be part of the calculations in who we have as a nominee.
That's actually interesting. That's a really interesting idea. So match head-to-head versus Hillary, Biden, whomever, and see...
We already have a lot of that data. They do that in a lot of the polls, and that's actually our strong suit, is that we do better against Hillary Clinton than any other candidate. We actually lead her in Pennsylvania, where Republicans haven't won since 1988. And I think we try to do that by being someone who is steadfast in principles and believes in limited constitutional government, but also takes that message, to the south side of Chicago and to Philadelphia and to different places and says, you know what, we want you to be in our party, and here's why.
Well, the outreach appealing to people's substantive and principled sensibilities versus on identity politics has always been what conservatives should do. Oh, and Reagan did it. And Reagan took his message everywhere. He'd debate anywhere, anyone, anywhere, anytime. And that's how you win.
I find that people are very much ready for it, because what I'm finding is people are saying to me, particularly in the African American community, they're saying, you know what, I'm not sure if any of the Democrat policies have really ever helped us, and they take us for granted. They don't come to our part of the town because they think we'll always vote Democrat. And then, frankly, the Republicans don't come because they gave up on us decades ago. And so when I'm in the south side of Chicago or when I'm in Detroit, people are happy to see me there, and they are open, and their vote is not a guarantee for the Democrats. If we could get a candidate who would take and talk about school choice, who would go to them and talk about criminal justice reform, who would go and talk to them about how we're going to resurrect your community by leaving more money in your community through dramatic targeted tax cuts for those who live in poverty.
Rand Paul, would love having you on. Thank you so much. Best of luck out there. Please keep in touch with us along the way. Any updates, we'd love having them from you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Bob.